Hi, I'm Professor Leah Rapaner. As a sociologist, I've made it my life's mission to take down every ridiculous gender myth out there. Like, do pretty people get paid more, or are women better multitaskers? This is Misperceived.
Hi, moms. Come in close, because this episode is for you. Do you find that you are always the person that is getting the phone call when something goes wrong? Are you the default parent when, a child has forgotten their birthday gift, or I don't know, your kid did something a little bit naughty at school today? Are you the person that they call when things are sick, when someone's forgotten a form, when a dentist appointment needs to be set? Are you the person that they call when you haven't filled out the form for the sports? Like you forgot some sort of additional thing, or, you've forgotten the shin guards for the day. Are you the one who's bringing the oranges to the halftime and actually in the Facebook groups reminding you 85 times that you need to do it? And then if you're the person who's like trying to hand over the correspondence to your partner, to the dad, do you find that correspondence comes right back to you no matter what you do? Now, dads, this is not an attack on you. Well, I mean, maybe some of you, but not all of you. For some of you, you're really trying to be in it. You're trying to be a part of it. You're trying to be an active and present parent, but the systems just are stacked up against you. Like it doesn't matter. No matter what happens, you can't seem to get anybody to call you back. And it's not because you have a terrible personality. Your wife told me that you're brilliant and you're wonderful and you're great. Sometimes it's because you're not picking up the phone, but in general, y'all, this is a question about systems. This is a question about gender norms. This is a question about structures. This is a question about how do we set up a society that puts mom as a default parent. And no matter how hard we try, you just can't seem to shake the roll. Don't worry, I have research today to back it up. I'm going to tell you why there's evidence showing that yes, mom, you are the default parent even when you try to offload the job. If you're like me, you have a very close relationship with your kids. I am very, very, very close with my daughter. I have one child, a single daughter, 15, gorgeous, wonderful, incredible, smart, competent. And we're a very close family, in part because we always lived abroad. We lived together. There's just kind of the three of us on the other side of the world in Australia. And that's created an incredibly close bond within my family. And what that means is that my daughter, if something goes wrong or something goes good, I'm usually the first that gets called. That can be a gift. I love it. I love hearing what's happening in her life. I love hearing the dramas because I want to be that person that is the support. But sometimes these calls are, not at the best time, like in the middle of work or in the middle of work or in the middle of work, right? It's at this moment where you can't take a break. But you want to be receptive to your kids. You want to be available. You want to be the person that they contact. And so what does that look like for you? Like, is it hard? Is it difficult? Is it challenging? When we were doing our mental load research, now again, for those of you who are new to this podcast, the mental load is that emotional thinking work. It's the emotional thinking work that you do every single day to keep your work, to keep your life, and to keep your family moving. And I am an expert in this area. I am one of the leading experts on the mental load because I've done a ton of research on it. This is coming from research. I've done a ton of research. I've talked to, tons of people about it. I've collected tons of data on this. And then one of the things that came so clearly through across the research on the mental load was that, parents feel this incredible mental load around correspondence, around being constantly available, around getting the calls. And one of the things that was discussed was like, when things go wrong, who gets the phone call? Who are you going to call? This is the article that I am going to talk to you about. The article is who are you going to call? And if you're a child of any age like mine, the first thing you think is like Ghostbusters, right? Like that's the natural progression. But who gets the phone calls? In our mental load interviews, we heard that it was almost always the moms, that the moms were getting the phone calls pretty much for anything that went wrong, that even if they indicated to the school that, to call someone else, don't call me, they often were the person by default and on speed dial. And what this meant was that even though they had tried to opt out of this type of mental load work or the physical work of being, attached to what their children's needed to do, they couldn't quite get rid of it. And what it meant was mothers became kind of like this intermediary between. It's like you have the schools over here, then you have the mom who then has to kind of become like almost a secretary and then outsources back to the dads or outsources to a grandparent or outsource it out. You're almost like the call center. You're almost like the 911 call center. Something's gone wrong. They're calling you and you then have to figure out whether the police come or the fire department comes. You are the linchpin between. And even if mom said, I don't want to be the person called, they still got called. One of the reasons why mothers found this really difficult to kind of offload is because we have this expectation of mothers to be perfect and intensive parents. Now, intensive parenting is this idea like there's a long history in the literature about this, but it's this idea that we need to be constantly on, always available, and making sure that our children are being uplifted in a way that helps to prepare them for the future, helps them prepare them for, anything that happens that comes next. And so part of the reasons why mothers become this linchpin is because the schools come to them first, but also part of this is they feel this incredible sense of responsibility to be the one who's there, to be the one, who's available as these phone calls are being made. Now, I'm going to talk to you today about one article because, I like to tell you about the research. Like, I like to tell you about what I'm finding. I like to tell you a little bit of a personal story about my own personal life. And then I want to talk to you about the research. I'm going to talk to you about an article by Christy Buzzard, Laura Gee, and Olga Stoddard. And this is in the it's an economics journal, a quarterly journal of economics. So very smart people doing economic research. And it's called Who You Gonna Call? Gender Inequality and External Demands for Parental Involvement, in case you want to read it. Now, one of their questions was like, they actually were doing this experiment to see. So we have these. I'll take a step back. I'm telling you that there's social norms that put moms in the center. I'm telling you that social norms mean that moms end up being the family manager. I'm telling you that they end up stepping into these roles often, sometimes with negotiation and sometimes not. I'm also telling you that this leads to a mental load, and the mental load is that emotional thinking work. And now I'm going to talk to you about the ways in which kind of institutions can reinforce that the schools can help kind of reinforce that labor for mothers, even when they don't want it. So in this research article, what they did was they actually took all of the principals in the world. Well, just kidding. All of the principals in the US, they had this whole universe of like 80,000 US based principals. So they found the principal of your school, basically. And they sent a cold email to them. And they sent a cold email asking them for various things. One email, might be asking them, hey, I'm interested in enrolling in your school. Can you talk to me about how I do it? Can you talk to me about the tuition? Or, they had another email asking about, could someone contact me for various different reasons, a question about extracurriculars or something like this. And so they sent these emails out and they did a bunch of manipulations. So sometimes they would send them from the mom's email account. And sometimes they would send them from a dad's email account. And again, these are all fictitious, right? But they were having either the father's name or the mother's name. And then sometimes they would say like, hey, this is the person that you should call. We have this question about enrollment. Please call the dad, the father, and have him respond to this email. And so in doing this, what they were trying to do is figure out what is the kind of pattern? What's the tendency for these principals to do in terms of responding to a parental inquiry? And now, I bet you already know the answer. I know you the answer on this, but there are some tips and tricks about how you can get around this. So first, what they found was that about only 20% of the principals made any calls. So if we take that 80,000, 20% of those did pick up the phone and call. On average, they called mothers 1.4 times more than fathers. So they were calling mothers basically 60% of the time, and they were calling fathers 41% of the time. What did help shift it is if they actually stated that the fathers are more available than the mothers, if in that inquiry of like, hey, we're curious about your school, call John, the father, he has more time to respond. They were more likely to call the dad, but they still called the mom 26% of the time. So even if they signaled, don't call me, call him, they called her 1 in 4 times. If they said, don't call him, okay, right? So that's like one thing. So even when they signal to them, like you should actually call the dad, they call the mom 1/4 of the time. If they signal in it, you should call the mom, right? Hey, we have a question about your school. Please call the mom. She's available. They called her 90% of the time. They were basically almost always calling her. What this is telling you is that even when you signal that the dads are available, they'll call the mom some of the time, which seems like a problem. Some principles, now I know because we're researchers, right? So when we do these kind of projects, we want to try to explain out all of the different things, right? All of the different ways in which this can be shifted, or making sure that actually what we're showing is right and robust. So you might be thinking like, hey, what happens if they actually call multiple times? Like, do some principals call both parents when they get that type of thing? Like if you actually get the email, do they call both? The answer is yes. Some principals did make multiple calls, right? They did call both parents, but they were much more likely to call the mother first and then the father. So even if they're calling both parents, it's the mother as the primary person. Now, they did a couple interesting things too, right? So they did a couple embedded within this experiment. So imagine they have multiple pieces of this project going. One is that they're just sending out all these cold emails to 80,000 principals and seeing who will respond, who will come back, and they're kind of manipulating the type of emails that they're sending. The other thing they did was they actually did a couple of surveys embedded within this. So they asked people and let me tell you exactly what they asked them. They asked people this question, they said this: imagine a family consists of one mother and one father living together jointly and raising at least one child. Then they say, when someone needs to contact them, in which circumstances do you think they'll contact the mother first? Because let's be clear, it's not just schools that are always contacting the mothers. It's a range of other people that are by default calling the mom. So, you might say hey, actually, okay, so the principal's calling and that's it. And that's one contained space, but that's not the only space in which our kids are interacting or engaging, or things need to be organized. And so what are the other ways in which people are calling? Who are they calling first when other things happen? So they asked these people, who do they think that the different groups would call first? This is interesting because it's not asking them who have you had call you first, but it's who do you think would call first? Sometimes in the research, we do these kind of third order expectations, and it's a way to get at these embedded assumptions. When you think about who's going to call the mom, if they're a sports leader or they're a tutor or they're a medical assistant or a medical appointment making, who do you think they're going to call? Now, on some level, this is interesting because many of us might work in these jobs. It's getting the general assumptions. And so if we are the person who is, the coach, or we are the person who is answering the phones at the doctor's office, it's good for us to be aware that we might have these biases embedded within us, that we might be thinking about this in a way, and then we might be acting in this way, and that it can create this knock-on effect of just by default always calling the parent. So they asked them, who do you think, if it was the sports leader or the tutor or the extracurricular leader, who are they going to call? This would not be surprising to you, I'm sure. If it's the sports leader, people think that I'll say it this way. Across all of these, sports leader, tutor, medical, dental, other, extracurricular leader, not sport, school-related, and childcare provider, people expect the first person they're going to call is the mom. Most people say they're going to call the mom. It's pretty much over 50%. But they expect that if it's the sport leader, they're much more likely to call the dad. If it's a tutor, they're slightly more likely to call the dad. And the person that's the least likely to call the dad is the childcare provider and the school-related person. So when we think about this, it's it makes sense because we expect dads to be engaged in the kids with extracurricular activities. We expect dads to be in this kind of superfluous, this fun role of they're helping the kids get to where they need to get. They're helping the kids get to school. They're helping the kids, play sports. And so of course the sports leader is more likely to call them. But I'm going to say to you, that is the work that is less frequent. That is the work that is going to be less daily. And the more daily calls are going to be around childcare providers and school related stuff, right? That's the daily stuff that the kids are going to have contact with, and they're going to have the most correspondence with the parents. And so this is also indicating to you this is where people think they're going to go, but this is actually where they are going. When they actually do the experiment, the schools are contacting the moms. They did this other really interesting thing where they were trying to kind of actually capture the so what. So I'm going to say to you, okay, hey, they call the moms first. So what? What do we care? Now, for some of the parents, they did survey some of the parents. Some of the parents are saying yes, this is how we want it to be. We have decided that this one person is just in charge of the school correspondence. So if the school comes to them, that makes sense. Others were wait, what? why is this happening? We should actually make sure that we have more balanced correspondence, and we should be signaling, don't call me, call him, right? We should be signaling this. And then they wanted to say, so there is some things that parents can do. Parents can actually make some steps to try to reduce this. But in addition to that, they ask them, what do they think is the consequence of that? Like, if you are the person who's always getting called, what happens to you? If you're primarily responsible for the childcare, what does that mean for you? And here's where the moms were saying, here's what I do. Because I am the direct contact person for schools, because I have the bulk of the childcare responsibility, I am much more likely to ask for more flexibility at my job. I am much more likely to ask for a shorter commute or try to identify a job that has less of a commute. I am much more likely to drop out of my job, like I'm going to become a stay-at-home parent. I'm going to ask for less pay. It can be very difficult to focus because of this constant correspondence in. I anticipate that I'm less likely to be promoted. It is having a negative effect on my relationship with my partner. It is impacting my health and well-being. And I think I'm being perceived as a worse employee. So when we think about these things, we think about them being kind of small, trivial interruptions to our workday. What they're showing, which is so powerful in this data, is that people are anticipating that this primary responsibility of being that contact person disproportionately for the kids' responsibilities is all of this knock-on effects in terms of your employment, asking for more flexibility, trying to get a different job that either you can stay home or you can commute, not being able to focus, having this feeling of interruption, being concerned that you're a worse employee, thinking that you're going to get lower pay, having it impact your health, having it spill into your relationship with your partner. When we did the mental load interviews, this was so crystal clear. People talked about this, that this was a constant drain on their mental load. This was the stuff they were thinking about. This was the stuff that they had difficult times. Mothers had a very difficult time talking to their partners about. It created conflict and rift within the relationships because they are living in two different social worlds. So where we think about this stuff as being minor interruptions, who cares if the school is calling? Who cares if it is a singular focus? Now that is actually it's a small thing that has a big impact. We have to understand that it's these small, contained, additive things that keep adding up into our lives that are load on load and one more thing on one more thing, to the point at which we're pushing women into burnout, to the point at which we feel like we don't have enough time to do anything right. We're constantly we're constantly in correspondence, and something has to give. And unfortunately, it's often mothers. It's often mothers that give in terms of their time, their energy, their careers, their insight. And the short answer is that they keep burning out on this. That is a problem. That is something we need to address. And part of it, I hope, is bringing awareness through the research. I'm going to give you one last thing because I want to be crystal clear on what I'm saying. Schools, sports, doctors' offices, they are institutions that are dictated by social norms. They are structures. It is not that this is a problem with teachers. It is not that this is a problem with principals. It is that this is a problem about how we create our social worlds. We create institutions and structures that impact how work gets distributed to different people, and that impacts people's mental load, which has us connected to burnout. What I want to say is when they asked actually the decision makers, the people at the schools who are making the decisions about who to contact, they were saying things like, of course I contacted the mothers because she's more likely to pick up the phone. She's more responsive. Okay. She's more likely to answer. When she answers, she can be more pleasant, but sometimes I'll go to the fathers if I need something around authority. They also talk about that the mothers are, easier to convince, that they're more open to the feedback from the educators. And so this might explain in part why they're calling the mothers. So what I want to say to you, if you are a parent listening to this, if you're a dad and an ally and an advocate, part of this is that you're not picking up the phone. If they're calling, you need to pick up the phone. If they call and they bring something to your attention, answer it with pleasantness, come in with positive attitude, and be open and honest with the school. Now, of course, many of you are doing this. I get that. And sometimes they still go to the moms. But for those of you who are not, this is my just slight suggestion, maybe slightly, just to be more alert and attentive, because this stuff matters. And if they don't go to you, they're going to go to your partner next. They're going to go to your child's mother next. So if you can be responsive, proactive, and active, it will help reduce some of this burden. So what does this look like for you? How does this hit you? Are you the mother who could be in the middle of surgery, knocked out on drugs, about to get your teeth pulled, and you still get the call from the school? Is that happening to you? Or are you the person who said, like, please don't call me during these hours, and yet the calls are still coming through? Are you the dad who's actually trying to make sure that the schools are engaged with you? You're showing up, you're there, you're present, you're in the groups, but still for some reason, everyone goes to your wife, even though you've made it crystal clear that you want to be the person contacted? Are you facing social norms in this way? Because it happens both directions, right? Even when dads try to step in, we can shut them out. So are you the dad that keeps trying but gets shut out? What does this look like for you? You can let me know via LinkedIn, via my Instagram, anything, any type of way in which you can interact with us. I'll tell you again, has been monumental. If you can listen, subscribe, share, rate, everything you're doing is just guaranteeing that I can get the university to give me more money to keep this going as we move into the new year. And don't we want to spend the whole time together? Don't we want to spend 2026 hearing about the research, talking, engaging, laughing, loving, and hearing more stories about my own personal life? Don't you want to hear everything about me in the next coming year? Let's make that our New Year's resolution. I'll make it mine and you make it yours. And any way you can interact with our content helps us to make the case that this is a worthwhile investment. Anyway, as per usual, I love you. I hope you have a wonderful week. And thank you for listening to Misperceived, where you don't need a PhD. Don't do it. Don't spend the money. Don't spend the time. Don't spend the energy, unless you want to, of course. Just come hang out with me. Let's spend this time together. 20 minutes. We get you in and out. Research bites, simple, digestible for you to take on and live your life with more purpose, meaning, and knowledge. I love you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk next week. Bye. Mwah.
Just something to note is that we are so lucky and grateful that this series is being supported by the Melbourne Public Humanities Initiative at the University of Melbourne.